The port is required to maintain 15 acres for the California least tern because it's an endangered species. And we first observed least terns nesting out near Reeves Field, up near Navy Way, back in the early 70s. So starting a couple years after that, the port entered into an agreement with the Fish and Wildlife Service, California Department of Fish and Game, that protect the least tern. And it's a memorandum of agreement that requires them to maintain 15 acres for least terns. So the least tern nesting site, the location has changed throughout the port. It used to be over near Pier 300, and it's been here since '97. The numbers have gone up from about 30 to 60 in the mid-1990s to over 1,200 now. So this is really nice to see this year that we've got over 1,280 nests. One of the things unusual about them is they nest rather scattered, whereas some of the larger terns nest in a very dense aggregation. So their nests are not very close. The least terns don't nest very closely. Also, other terns typically nest on islands, whereas least terns nest on beaches. So that's one of the reasons they're listed as endangered. Back in the late 1800s, there's some records from early ornithologists that say that any beach that you found south of Santa Monica, that there were just least terns nesting on those beaches. But then, of course, we had Pacific Coast Highway, followed by development, and the beach cleaners that come in and clean the beaches. So that's how they ended up with, we believe there were down to about 600 pairs statewide when they were first listed. And now it's about 6,000 statewide, so they're doing much better.
So they needed a little help.
They needed a little help, and a lot of people ask me, well, the numbers have gone up from 600 to 6,000. Isn't it about time to take them off the endangered species list? One of the problems is most of the nesting areas are fairly close to residential areas or industrial areas where we do have several different types of predators that can come in. Crows, American crows are one of the common predators here. They can wipe out, we've seen a group of crows come in and wipe out an entire nesting area within a couple hours. They eat the eggs and the chicks. Another bird is called an American kestrel. It's a small little hawk, and they're native, just like the crows, but they nest in palm trees. So we've enhanced habitat for American kestrels, and they're our most common predator of least tern chicks. So once they come off the endangered species list, there may not be any more funding for predator management and protection, so their numbers are going to start plummeting very quickly when that happens.
How darling. Okay, what's his information? How old do you think?
He was probably hatched this morning because you can see that his feathers are still a little bit wet right here. So it's going to take him 21 days before he can fly on his own. Up until then, the parents are going to be bringing in food, and even after he can fly, the parents are going to be bringing in food. But he has to be able to get away from predators for 21 days.
So the nest really is not camouflaged at all. It's just a little indentation.
It's not much. It's not much at all. Sometimes there's not even shells in it like that. It's just a little depression in the sand.
So you have to be really careful out here.
Very careful. You have to watch where every foot is going before you step. So,
well, welcome. He's so sweet.
Yeah. Do you want to hold the least tern chick? It's an old wives' tale that the parents abandon them after you hold a baby bird, because birds don't really have much of a sense of smell.
Oh, okay.
Except for they believe vultures might have a sense of smell to find the putrid prey that they have.
It just weighs like nothing.
Yeah. He's about well, let's see. When they're this size, they're about 5 to 10 grams. The adults are about 50. So
that's Mom and Dad above us somewhere.
Mom and Dad are right above us.
Keeping a lookout.
What are you doing with my baby? So, but you'll notice when we walk away, they'll come right back. The port prepares the site starting in March. They clear the vegetation. You can see a lot of the vegetation out here because the terns prefer to nest in an area where there's not a whole lot of vegetation. They like a little bit for the chicks to find shelter. But they do that in March, and they repair this fencing. This is what we call chick fencing. Keeps the chicks enclosed. And
Do they get out and wander around?
the chicks get out and wander around. They're only in the nest for about 2 days.
Oh, okay.
And then after that, they're wandering around the nesting site. The parents are able to find
Good morning, everybody. It's a bit before 10, but we're going to get the festivities started by welcoming Council Member Tom LaBonge and members of the Irish American community here to celebrate St. Patrick's Day on March 17, 2010. So, Mr. LaBonge, if you will, give him a big hand and welcome him in. Would everyone please rise and greet our guests? Please rise.
Super. Come on in here.
be seated. Thank you, Mr. Labange. That was just wonderful, and I appreciate you continuing the tradition here in the Los Angeles City Council chambers of celebrating St. Patrick's Day with the community here on Channel 35 for the entire city to enjoy.
Well, Madam President, thank you very much. It's a very special day for all of us. It's the 135th anniversary of I am talking too fast. Thank you, Madam President. Today is the 135th anniversary of Irish American Heritage Civic Ceremony here in Council Chambers in Los Angeles. And I'm joined by the great leader of the Irish American community. Please welcome Terry Anderson. Terry, for years, has worked tirelessly on this effort with also former council member Nate Holden, who was a champion, as always, of these events. And then Dave Cunningham before that, and Art Snyder before that, all the way down. But today we're here because we have very special people, and I'd like you to introduce the first two special people in today's ceremony, after your remarks.
Well, first of all, welcome everybody. We're here to start the great St. Paddy's Day here in L.A. And what I'd first like to do is introduce our 2010 Southern California Rosa Tralee, who will represent Los Angeles and Ireland at the International Rosa Tralee program in Ireland next August. And she has a special treat for us. Her name is Sarah Phelan. She was selected Saturday night at the big St. Paddy's Day ball at CBS Studio City. Sarah, do you have a word or two?
Oh, yes, I do. Just say happy St. Patrick's Day to Los Angeles. And also, I would like to thank Terry Anderson and all of the Irish community here in Southern California to so graciously helping me represent Ireland in Tralee this summer for the International Rosa Tralee Festival. Thank you.
We have
It's okay.
We have a special treat here. Sarah is a beautiful singer, and she is going to start off the Day of the Irish with Danny Boy.
Okay, gonna sing Danny Boy, okay. Oh, Danny Boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the leaves are falling. 'Tis you, must go and I must bide. But come ye back when the summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis ivy in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so.
Sarah Phelan, thank you very much, our Rosa Tralee. Thank you so much. Another big hand for Sarah. Terry, as we make our very special presentations, Terry, let's call up our special honorees for 2010, if you would, please.
How about world-renowned Irish marathon runner Gerard Dagan? Gerard?
See if he is.
Ladies and gentlemen, councilmen and councilwomen, it's a great honor for me to receive this award. First of all, I would like to thank the committee and the council for the award. Secondly, I would like to thank my parents who have travelled here from Ireland to be with us on this special day, and also for the rest of my family. Success as an athlete and representing your country doesn't just begin today or yesterday. It began many, many years ago when I was 10, 11, 12 years of age. So they put up with a lot. Finally, I'd like to thank my girlfriend, also my partner, because being a partner of an athlete is not an easy thing. You put up with a lot of lifestyle changes and having to go to bed early and stuff like that, so that's difficult. And finally, I'd also like to thank basically the Irish community of Southern California and the city of Los Angeles, because this is my home and this is where I train and this is where I've gained a lot of my success. And I feel like I'm not only representing Ireland when I wear that green uniform, I also feel like I'm representing this area and the Irish of Southern California and of Los Angeles. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations. We'll take a picture. Thank you. Thank you. We'll take a picture afterwards. Next.
Our next honoree is a Huntington Beach educator who has contributed greatly to the Irish community, an outstanding person of impeccable character, Mary Alice Madden.
All right, Mary Alice.
In particular, I want to extend my thank yous to my dear friends in the Irish Fair Foundation. Thank you very, very much.
Mary, thank you very much. Okay.
Our next honoree is an Irish-American journalist here in Los Angeles who's been really covering the Irish for probably 25, 30 years, Lorraine Chambers.
All right, Lorraine.
Thank you very much.
Very well.
Appreciate it. Well, good morning. Thanks for putting up with us Irish for today. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Terry Anderson, over 25 years with the Irish Fair. I was a gypsy baby from Canada, Dublin parents. My column is Dubliner's Daughter. It's out of Galway on Irish Immigrant website. And I want to tell you, being Irish in Southern California, we get to be it 365 days a year, and we appreciate the one day you do it with us. Thank you very much.
Lorraine, very nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gary?
Our next honoree is the outstanding young fellow who has been with the Emeralds, I think since their beginning, the Los Angeles Emerald Society, Mike Murphy.
Michael. Right here. Michael. Good to see you, Michael. Fantastic. Okay.
Thank you very much. It's an honor. I'll keep it short and sweet, which is unusual for the Irish. I started my St. Patrick's Day off right by a kiss with this lovely lady over here, 95 years old. She gave me a smack on the lips, and that's the way it should be on St. Patrick's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Cassidy and Murphy.
Now we have special honors here. This is a great leader for the Los Angeles Police Department. He is in charge of the northeast area of the city of Los Angeles. Very effective in community-based policing. Please welcome Captain William Murphy. Congratulations.
This actually brings back some memories. Years and years ago when I was a police officer, I remember participating in this ceremony when it was Nate O'Holden, Harryito. He was a big supporter then, and we appreciate all he did. I just wanted to say today's a day that everybody is Irish. It's a day that everybody goes out there and they do party, but let's be responsible and let's have a great day. Thank you. God bless everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to welcome the Firefighter of the Year from the Los Angeles City Fire Department, responsible for the greater Griffith Park area from Engine 56, headed up the hydrant program that gave us the water to put out those big bad fires. Please welcome the great Ken Cassidy. Engine 56.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank the council and the LA City. This is a outstanding award, and I really do appreciate it. I want to thank my family for showing up here, and my friends, and happy St. Paddy's Day.
Good job. Thank you very much. As you know, we have a special designee for the Mulholland Award winner, William Mulholland, who was born in Belfast, raised in Dublin, came to Los Angeles, lived in a grassy field near what was to be Los Feliz and Riverside Drive to control the water ditch of the Cahuenga Valley water system, later rose to be the great chief of the Department of Water and Power. This year's Mulholland Award winner goes to a great employee of the Department of Water and Power who has been a specialist for over 25 years, a water utility worker. Please welcome Joe O'Hara. Hey, Joe.
Thank you for the opportunity to receive such a fine award. Like you said, I've been with the department for coming up on 25 years. Serving the citizens of Los Angeles, providing a nice income for my family, and living within the city. It's a good place to work. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Joe, for what you do. And I also want to recognize the very special Steve O. Malinowski, 41 years. Come here, Steve. 41 years, O. Malinowski, with Water and Power. Congratulations.
That's it.
Okay.
And now, we would like to we have a special plaque for the new Rosa tree, Sarah Phelan.
Sarah, on behalf of our City Council President, Jan Perry, Acting Mayor of Los Angeles, great councilwoman of the 9th District, made downtown revitalized with great energy. On behalf of our Mayor, Mr. Villaraigosa, Mr. Garcetti, the President Council, and myself, you, the Rosa Turley, who can sing, Danny Boy. Oh, I hope you sing it a lot today because you make a lot of people teary-eyed. God bless you, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, perhaps Scott would take the award for the Emerald Society.
Scott, the Emerald Society was played this morning in the 9th District at 9th and Figueroa to get a free meal from former Mayor Richard Reardon. They did a great job, and congratulations to the Emerald Society. They'll be at LA Live today, playing later on for the Irish American Parade. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you. And now, it's a pleasure to present the Irish Woman of the Year, a woman of outstanding quality who has contributed again and again and again over year after year after year to make all things Irish in this town flourish. I'd like to present to Councilman LaBonge and the LA City Council, Vicki Carl.
Vicki, thank you so much. Congratulations.
I just want to say thank you very much to all my friends in the Irish American community of Los Angeles. It's been a real pleasure spending the last, 25 years with you guys. Thanks a lot.
Good job.
And now the Irishman of the Year, a person who hails from Boston. Reminds me, I once knew a fellow from Boston, and I said, "Are you going to Ireland this summer?" He said, "Why would I go to Ireland?" I said, "To see the Irish." He said, "If I want to see the Irish, I'll go back to Boston." This gentleman is a retired vice president of the California Caltech. He's just known as the Irish ambassador in Pasadena and throughout all of Los Angeles. He's here with his lovely wife. Let me introduce Bob O'Rourke, Irishman of the Year.
Well, let me say thank you to Tom LaBonge and the City Council, and in particular to Terry Anderson for his hard work in bringing this wonderful day to the City of Los Angeles. As a young lad growing up in Boston, my parents always had one thing to say to me: if you're lucky enough to be Irish, then you're lucky enough. So thank you again for this great hospitality.
As we conclude our ceremonies today, I want to thank all the honorees and the Irishman and Woman of the Year for their outstanding service and their reflection of great character and pride for all of Irish America. I especially want to thank our host here, Councilman Tom LaBonge. Let's hear it for the Lord Mayor of all things Irish in L.A.
Thank you, Terry.
And thank you to the Los Angeles City Council.
Madam President, thank you. It's a great day to be Irish. We're going to march out of here and back to take some pictures. Thank you, Madam President, for this great time.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I know everybody appreciates it. Let's give them a big hand.
Thank you. Here we go.
arrival of one more member, so we can call the roll and start the meeting. All right, Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Alarcon, Cardenas, Han, Weezer, Correct, Krikourian, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weston, Zine, Garcetti, 10 members present, and a quorum, Madam President.
All right, welcome to the Los Angeles City Hall. Today is Wednesday, March 17th, and this is the Los Angeles City Council chamber. We meet 3 times per week on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. All meetings are open to the public and begin at 10 a.m. If you can't come to City Hall, please log on to www.lacity.org or listen at council phone at 213-621-CITY. Madam Clerk, what is our first item of business?
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. Cardenas moves, Ms. Hahn seconds.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Parks moves, Mr. Zine seconds.
And before beginning the regular agenda, Madam President, there's a request to continue 2 of the items 7 and 8, a request to continue those to for 1 week to March 24th.
All right, that'll be without objection. First, Mr. Parks?
I'd like to also continue number 1 as the controller personnel unavailable today to Friday.
All right, again without objection.
Also, item 6 as well, continued to the 24th.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Cardenas, again without objection. All right, Madam Clerk, next item of business.
That would take council to the agenda. Items 2 through 11 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration, and there are cards on 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9, and then 10 and 11 are the only ones that don't have cards on that, so council can vote on those.
Mr. Parks, did you have to?
Yes. Like on the numbers 2, 3, and 5, when could we hear those together? They're all connected.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hahn?
10 and 11. 10 and 11? 10 and 11.
Okay, heard together. Yes?
10 and 11, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other items, members? Okay, let's open.
That would take care of all the items, Madam President, on those. They're either called special or have been continued already.
All right, next matter of business?
The next items are the closed session items 12, 13, and 14. Do you wish to hold those on the desk?
Yes.
And then on the continuation agenda, item number 15 has a card on it. Do you wish to call that special?
All right, that'll be called special.
And then that would take council back to the items called special and public comment.
All right, why don't we go through public comment? And our first speaker is Dr. Clyde Williams. And then following Dr. Williams, we will go to San Pedro for Marco Sanchez.
Dr. Clyde Williams, 4115 Barrett Road, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Today, the Southwest Museum stands closed. Autry National Center has closed it to the public. Why? Because the clock is ticking, much like for the economic crisis that we're in right here. The clock never stops. Within 3 years, 4 years, they could destroy the entire Southwest Museum. That is, they can rip the collection out of it without any repercussions. There is a movie that's going around right now in the Laemmle theaters called Tale of a Steal. Steal what? Steal the collection from a major museum that was done and fought successfully by the citizens that supported that museum. The Southwest Museum Coalition, Friends of the Southwest Museum, support the Southwest Museum. We also had a meeting last night with the city's attorney. He says, well, problem is I have to have a basis for a suit. Well, the basis of the suit is the Autry National Center's current ground lease agreement with the city of Los Angeles. They've never complied with it. All the terms and conditions, and they are many and they are specific, have not been complied with. Have they even paid the $1 a year for the last 20 years? No. So maybe if you want some money, declare the Autry National Center in default and take back the ground and all improvements thereon. So please try to see the Limley Theater's Tale of a Steel to see how it can be done.
Thank you. We'll go down to San Pedro for Marco Sanchez.
Good morning, council members. My name is Marco Sanchez, and I have been a city worker for 4 years. I am a civil engineering associate in Janice District's office, Janice Hans District. In my time at the city, I have seen more and more of our engineering work given to consultants. Do you know what we pay the consulting firms to have an engineer do the same work I do? Here are some typical hourly rates. It's anywhere from $117 an hour to $221 an hour. That's $243 a year to $416,000 a year. Forget about parity with DWP. I want parity with a consultant that sits next to me. Seriously, this is a ridiculous waste of taxpayer money. Our bargaining unit is trying to negotiate a new labor agreement right now. Please give your negotiating team bargaining instructions so we can do something about this giveaway of city money and put the engineering work back in the hands of the best available and most cost-effective engineers, the city engineers of MOU 8 and 17. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to City Hall for Joseph Gentry. Mr. Joseph Gentry.
Good morning, Good morning, City Council members, City Attorney. Good morning. I have this information here that is I would like to say, if you can, I need a tax audit examination of this information. It's very delicate. I do not want it to harm me in any way. That's all I would like to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that if I could have a contact appointment, I'll be in the clerk's office.
Thank you. Phil Jennerjan.
So, good morning, council members. My name is Phil Jennerjohn. I'm a candidate for United States Congress in the 33rd Congressional District here in Los Angeles, California. I'm here today to demand the immediate resignation of Richard Alarcon. And the reason I'm doing this is because all of you are probably familiar with the story. The man has no integrity. He's all lies all the time. In fact, the documents he filled out with the city clerk's office to run for city council 2 years ago were filled with lies. He said he lived in the 7th district. He does not. He lives in the 2nd district. And let's get all the alleged stuff out of the way because there are plenty of eyewitnesses who can testify to this fact. I'm giving Councilman Alarcon 10 days to resign, and if he does not, then I'm going to start contacting voters in the 7th district to file a lawsuit not only against the city but against him personally. In fact, I'm surprised there's not a sharp attorney out there that are already hustling up voters for this. The incompetence, the corruption on this city council is unprecedented. I'd like to ask you, council members, the few of you that are present here today, where is your dignity? Where is your integrity? Where is your honesty? You are very aware that Alarcon is committing a criminal act, but you sit there and do nothing. At a bare minimum, you should ask him to recuse himself from any votes on this council. How many of you have done this? How many of you have called for him to resign? Oh, I see. It's just me then. Okay. Well, that's why I formed the organization recallcityhall.org to recall every single one of you from your jobs. The level of dignity I see on this city council, 0. Integrity, 0. Honesty, 0. Trust, 0. I encourage all viewers on Channel 35 to visit the website, recallcityhall.org, and to support the recall when we launch it in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Augustine Serrala.
First of all, I'm from the Greater Echo Park Division Neighborhood Council, and first of all, I'd like to saludar a los San Patricios, a San Patricio en su día, and that's for all of you that are bilingually challenged. That's thank you, or a celebration of St. Patrick's Day, but I'm really here to talk about the lack of oversight by this council, and specifically a person that was just mentioned, Mr. Alarcon, when he was in charge of Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, that his assistant that he has, Jose Sigala, runs the neighborhood council in Echo Park, and he's in charge and should be overseeing the fact that there has not been a filing of quarterly reports, financial reports for that district from fiscal year 10, second quarter, first quarter, fiscal year 10, fiscal year 9, fourth quarter, fiscal year 9, third quarter, fiscal year 9, second quarter, and fiscal year 10 year. The CIO, which is Ms. Lisa Baca, who is Mr. Sigala's wife, has not taken any minutes about important things. There have not been any minutes submitted in that council for the last, I think it's 7-8 months. Where is the oversight? I don't know who's in charge of done at this time, but whoever is not doing their job. Mr. Alarcon was there, and he allowed his assistant, Jose Sigala, to run rampant. He used to hang around here and give people all kinds of notice until you all got tired of him and chased him out of here. But where is the oversight? You know, we don't have money to be throwing away. The city is almost bankrupt, and yet this is allowed to happen. The oversight over these budgets is not being done. Mr. Banwan Kim, I understand, has resigned. I don't know if it's under pressure because he has never done his job. Where is the oversight? It's incumbent on you as council people to take over this oversight, and we demand an investigation of this lack of oversight.
Our next speaker will be David Lugo. David Lugo.
Mr. Lugo speaks Spanish, and translator's not here.
Momento, señor, yo tengo
Is there? There is.
Hold on, ella está ahí. Momento, señor.
¿Listo? Sí, mi nombre es David Lugo. Antes que nada quiero felicitar a los señores de irlandeses por el Día de San Patricio.
My name is Jose Lugo. I'm here to congratulate everybody on St. Patrick's Day.
En este día yo también vengo a hacer una protesta sobre la comunidad de Echo Park.
On this day, I'm here also to present a protest. I'm from Echo Park community.
En contra del comité que no hacen reportes, en la comunidad no participan.
Against the neighborhood council because they do not write any minutes, they do not let other community members participate.
Y además en la mayoría de nuestras personas en la comunidad los están acusando de corruptos.
And as a matter of fact, they are accusing the rest of us stakeholders as corrupt.
La ciudad no tiene dinero.
You know that the city doesn't have any money.
Están despidiendo miles de empleados.
You're laying off thousands of employees.
Mientras que el comité de Echo Park está malgastando el dinero.
And in the meantime, the Echo Park Neighborhood Council is wasting your money.
Informes.
They do not provide any momentos, any minutes, any reports.
Y nosotros queremos que ustedes pongan la ley. Nadie está por encima de la ley.
And I want you guys just to abide by the law. No one should not follow the law.
Y también por último, para recordarle al señor Gil Garcetti que nosotros no tenemos nadie que nos ayude en nuestra comunidad.
And also I would like to reiterate and remind Mr. Gil Garcetti that we don't have anyone in our community that can help us.
Él nos quitó a la señora Billie Jean.
He removed Miss Billie Jean.
Ella ha trabajado muy bien en el área de Echo Park por mi área donde estoy por Tempo.
She used to help us a lot. She used to work, do a very good job in our area around Echo Park, around Temple.
Dicen algunas personas que pusiera a una señora de nombre Mariquín. Queremos que nos las cambien y que nos devuelvan a Billie Jean.
Some people have said that they've replaced Billie Jean with a lady named Mariquín, but we want Billie Jean to come back to our community.
Por favor, señor Garcetti, queremos trabajar con usted.
Please, Mr. Garcetti, we
apoya a nuestra comunidad.
We truly want to work with you, and we ask you to support our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arnold Sachs, you're our next speaker.
Good morning. Thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day. SOS. To save the Sabbath from the heathen marathoners. Again, this year, only 104 churches impacted.
quite the leadership role displayed by Councilman Parks. Keeping this display of leadership in focus, my proposal is to nominate Councilman Parks for SOB, Save Our Budget, a new organization that will surely benefit from the lack of leadership displayed by the councilman in protecting the city's interest regarding the LA Marathon. The duplicity and the sleazy meetings that were held here to push this forum for saving our Sabbath, all the while changing the role of who owns the marathon, when the marathon date would be run, giving up the city's right to appeal any decisions on either one of those qualities is worthy of 4 A's and a great council leadership shown by a unanimous vote. And speaking of showing, it was a wonderful wonderful presentation put on this morning regarding the honoring of St. Patrick's Day. And it was great to see all the council members in their seats this morning. Oh wait, council members weren't in their seats this morning. Another phony showing by the outstanding city council. You must have all been busy, couldn't make it here for the 10:15 start of council. Another wonderful showing by this outstanding LA City Council. My apologies to you, Mr. Labange, but the fact that having people sit in your seats to look busy is ridiculous.
Mr. Labange, would you like to correct the record on that, please, for the viewing public? And
correct the record. Thank you, Madam President. This was a planned event to make sure we do our business on time, which we did, and we had our ceremonies, which was a great delight to the Irish American community here, that started on time early. And I welcome the man from Hawthorne to come and voice his concern, but the Irish American community is very proud of today's activities here in City Hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Labange, for correcting the record and stating the facts. Now to San Pedro, to Lamont Orono.
Good morning and happy St. Patrick's Day to all that apply. I'm a gardener and I'm good at my job. And I'm proud to work for the harbor. And I would like to see the mayor, city councilman, and our union, 721, get together and work out a solution instead of sweeping everything under the rug and come up with these layoffs. It doesn't help. And Jesse Jackson said, common ground, I say common sense. Come up with a solution. You people have been elected, appointed. Show me how good you are, because I'm good at my work. And let's keep LA beautiful and green, especially the harbor department. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no further public comment cards, so Madam Clerk, can we take the first item on the agenda?
First item on the agenda is item number 2. That was called special by Councilmember Parks, and there are cards on that item, and I believe he wanted to take items 3 and 5 along with item number 2.
All right. Mr. Parks, would you like me to take public comment first? Yes. All right. I will take the public comment cards from items 2, 3, and 5 and call people up so that they can speak. The first card is very difficult to read, but it looks like the person's name is Lenore or Leonard. It's Leonard or Lenore. All right, guess not. Dr. Williams, come on up. And then Arnold Sachs, you're after Dr. Williams. And after Arnold Sachs is, well, that's it. Dr. Williams and Arnold Sachs. Please go ahead, Dr. Williams.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. A scorecard. Mr. Huizar and I have had similar thoughts on occasion, and a scorecard needs to be done for what we're going through now, next year, and the years after that. That is, all you have to do is put department on one side, level of service, number of positions, costs, current, proposed, net. Make it simple so that people can understand the mess that we're in right now. A lot of people call it recession. I would call it a depression. Fortunately, last year, Obama took some actions, previous administrations took some actions that avoided the depth of the depression, but it's not over yet. And what is the projected revenues in the future? Not so pretty. So make it simple so that people can understand the situation that we're in right now. As one commissioner once said, if I can't understand what you're telling us, how can I explain that to anyone else, especially at our neighborhood council meetings? We don't know what's going on. And stealth projects are going through. We see it. DWP is going to have a meeting tomorrow. Wow, guess what? Costs will go up. It's fees so that you don't need a 2/3 majority. However, we're going to try to bring these things to the clarity so that people can understand them. But just make a big scorecard. Put it up on the side of the city hall. Have a digital display so that you can see how much money we are spending every second. My calculation is that this 2 minutes has cost the city roughly $1,200, $1,500.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Mr. Arnold Sachs.
Thank you. Good morning, Arnold Sachs. Item number 2, closed sessions. Again, as we heard once before already, we need to have these closed sessions here in council chambers. We need to have the public aware of what exactly is being bargained for by the elected officials who represent the city workers as a city family, because you're wearing 2 hats, but you don't even have one mind. As noted in the newspaper, the city of Vernon eliminated its insurance coverage for families of city workers. When are we going to hear, or when are you going to decide that you want to negotiate for these benefits that are sinking the city? There is the cost. The city budget is predicated by the amount that the city needs to pay into the pension. It's not a business failure, it's a pension failure that has created this budget deficit. It's a investment failure in the pensions that have created this need to reimburse the funding. We need pension reform. You've already missed the date for this year. If any pension reform is going to occur, it'll be enacted on the next year. So when does it appear before the city public to have a word on it, to have a voice in it? 2 years, 3 years down the road. You swim and you tread water and you go nowhere. We need some leadership. It's not going to happen this year. When is the next city council election? We can only pray. There's this item number 3, and Madam Chair, are we getting 1 minute or 3 minutes, or since you're combining these items and we put cards in on these, what is the status for the time allotted to speak on them?
You just used up 2 minutes.
Well, yeah, but I'm waiting to find out, because we'd get a card. I'm not debating, sir. I'm asking question.
Excuse me, sir. We're attempting to answer your question.
Well, I'm
if you will
getting
hold on just a second, I will get an answer from the city attorney. You can have 1 more minute, and you're speaking on all 3 items.
Thank you. Not a debate, Councilman Zine. This continued consideration of this eliminating 1,000 positions and elimination of 3,000 additional positions in item number 3, and another 4,000 positions in item number 5. Is that a total of 8,000 positions? Is that just a total of 4,000 positions? And again, there's no mention in here of what the effects of the ELIP program will be on these total number of positions to be eliminated. And as in item number 9, you mentioned contract personnel with displaced general fund personnel. Are these positions going to be contract personnel? Are these positions going to be general fund personnel? And if they're contract personnel, who pays for the budget? Who pays for the benefits? Again, unknown qualities that the public has no right to know about, because it's negotiated by the city and the unions, and the public is kept out, except for the part where they get the bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That closes our public comment. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Madam President. That's the city staff, the CAO, the CLA, and also personnel to come up to the table. Colleagues, looking at items 2, 3, and 5, they pretty much dovetail into each other. That deals with budget deficits for this year and next year, and a report on the balancing budget acts. Also on number 3, the 1,000 positions to be eliminated, 3,000 authorities, and number 5 is the CAO's report and estimating the savings. I think the newest information, Mr. Santana, is item 2 that deals with your report with the most current layoff list. And so maybe we can start with that and we can roll into the other 2, which is kind of update information.
Good morning. Miguel Santana, City Administrative Officer. As indicated in our report, there have been about 459 positions that have been identified so far by the departments for layoffs. And as point of clarifying, for purposes of this discussion, a layoff doesn't necessarily mean that someone's walking out the door. It means a layoff, it means that someone's being displaced from their current position, and that could mean they're walking out the door of city service, or that could mean that they're moving to a different position. Of those 459, there's a potential of actual real layoffs from the standpoint of walking out the door of 437 positions. 108 of those positions are non-coalition members, meaning that they are the most likely to experience exiting city service. As you know, under the coalition agreement, we're forbidden from any actual layoffs to coalition members, which represent 329 of the 459 identified so far. As of today, there's been, 39. As of today, there's been 39 layoffs completed by the Personnel Department, and 33 of those individuals are leaving service. 37. Okay, updated number, 37. And 2 of those individuals are being displaced to lower level jobs. At this point, I don't know if the Director of Personnel wants to add anything more.
No, I think that...
And Miguel, could you somewhat reconcile the report that you just related to from March 15th and the report that you did on February 24th that gave us an overview on estimated savings? With this rate of 39 positions at this date, and your report on number 5 that says we must have 4,000 positions eliminated to hit that, quote, $400 million mark, what's our progress and what do we expect to achieve between now and June 30th?
Well, the first round, we're moving forward with the original 1,000 that was recommended in our financial status report in January, and these 459 positions represent part of that initial 1,000. The general managers are moving as aggressively to process those, working with the Personnel Department and the Mayor's Office. We're in the March FSR, which will come out sometime in the next few weeks. We will provide an estimate of the savings that will be generated as a result of those actions and as a result of the ones that are pending. We should know by then approximately how many additional positions will be impacted. As part of the budget process, the mayor and my office is working with each general manager to identify the additional 3,000 positions. The mayor has indicated that he will release and announce those additional 3,000 positions prior to the release of the budget. That will come out in the first week of April, where we will have a clear indication of which positions we're talking about and have an estimate of the potential layoffs that represents. When the council adopts the budget, those positions, if your body agrees, would be eliminated at that point in time.
Okay. And then, Miguel, remind us of the figure you gave us if we don't meet that June 30th date, what the impact is on the 10-11 budget.
In terms of, for this fiscal year, we budgeted approximately $7 million as a result of the elimination of the 1,000 positions, keeping in mind that most of those positions we actually couldn't generate savings because they were either coalition members or because of the short time frame. We also included in that figure the number of positions that would be transferred from the general fund to special funds. So that was an estimate, and we should have clarity. In the report that we submitted on the 24th of February, we gave an estimate of how much would be saved in a full fiscal year for the 4,000 positions in total, and that assumes effective July 1st, and that was approximately $301 million for a full fiscal year savings for the elimination of 4,000 positions. So to the extent that we deviate from that date, then obviously that target number gets reduced.
Let me ask a mechanical question. Maggie, if we are in the report that's dated March 15th, and we show that 300 plus positions are coalition positions, but yet they can't be laid off prior to July 1st, can paperwork be done to put them in the queue so that if they're effective July 1st, or do we have to go through July, August, September to get those processed?
Of those positions that have been identified, we should have that paperwork, the calculations and the paperwork ready to go before the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, so they could become effective July 1st?
That's correct.
Okay. And then, as you told us, Maggie, recently, what is the number that you can safely predict that you can process between now and June 30th?
Well, we're planning on completing all of the non-coalition layoffs, and included in that would be the calculations for all of the coalition that have already been identified.
Okay, but I mean, as far as the numbers, can you absorb an additional number other than these 459 between now and June 30th?
Our estimate is we should be able to complete 800.
800?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Miguel, how does that fix us for June 30th to July 1st for the number of 4,000, if she can process
in terms of the targeted savings that was outlined on the February 24th report, it obviously has an impact on that. The budget is where all of that will be reconciled, given the latest information we have from the Department of Personnel, and a better understanding of how long the process takes. I mean, keep in mind the city has never engaged in this level of layoffs already. With the number of layoffs we've done more layoffs in the city history. What you'll see in the budget is how the targeted number in terms of the savings generated by the elimination of the positions fits into the larger picture.
Okay. Well, in the sense of timing, is an expectation that we'll get the budget earlier, or whether it get April 22nd, or does it? We were told possibly April 1st.
Well, the actual the number and the specific positions that the budget will be recommending for elimination will be available to your council the first week of April. I just came from a meeting with the mayor's office, and they clearly intend to meet that goal. And my guess would be that the bulk of the discussion that council will want to have will be around the service impact of the elimination of those positions. The budget book itself will not be ready at that time because, as you know, it's an incredibly complicated process. It takes at least a week to actually even print the document itself. So one way of looking at it is that the meat or the most important part of the budget you'll have sooner. The actual budget may not be released until 2 or 3 weeks after that.
Mr. Parks, if you could press your button again.
Can I ask one more question?
Well, okay. Just one.
It's just one.
Just one.
Bill, could you give us an update on the issue of ERIP so there's clarity as to the progress that's been made?
We're on track working with LACERS. All of the general fund early retirement positions have been processed, and all the individuals have, for the most part, left city service. LACERS is now working on the special funded positions and the proprietaries, and they're on target to have all those processed by the end of the fiscal year. As part of the budget process, we will have an indication as to how many of those positions will be filled with a person within that organization through a promotion. There's some positions, many positions that will not be filled, mainly to generate the savings, clearly in the general funded positions, but also as we're walking through the budget, there's a need for savings in the proprietaries and the special funds. So the way we're initiating that work is we're doing a real zero-based budgeting when it comes to the ERIP positions, and we're essentially backfilling them one by one to make sure that they're fully funded.
Thank you. Mr. Parks, press your button again if you want to continue. Mr. Koretz is our next speaker in the queue.
Yes, I'm looking at some of these items in terms of the services that we're cutting, and I notice we've given very substantial cuts to Channel 35. Do we have anyone here that can speak to what all the people that are cutting, what they do and what those services that will not be performed now would be? Before we actually lay these folks off, if there's some way to have a presentation on what we're losing as services, I would appreciate it, because I don't think we've really had that kind of in-depth discussion, and I don't know whether the council, if they were aware of those services, would be happy to see them devastated to this degree. So there may be some of those positions that we might want to try to keep on board.
To clarify, Council Member, those positions have already been notified. We could certainly have the department come on Friday and talk about the service impact. The little that I know about what the service impact is obviously on the extensiveness of the programming that currently provides. There's still going to be, obviously, these meetings and the other regular scheduled meetings that they cover will continue to be televised.
Right, but of course, notifying someone doesn't mean that we actually have to follow through and actually lay them off. Certainly there have been entities like LAUSD, which over the years have notified thousands of teachers that they were being cut and then didn't lay any of them off. So it's certainly not too late until those people have actually been terminated.
Councilmember, the process for layoff is that the individuals will be given notice, 24 hours notice, and then they will be put on administrative leave, where they will then go through a process of transitioning out of city employment. So it is my understanding that these employees have been notified.
So you're saying that when we notify them, they only have 24 hours between the time they're notified and the time they're laid off?
To the time that they leave the workplace.
Wow. And we're sure that's in keeping with state and federal law? When they notice?
Yes.
They're still being paid for 2 weeks.
Right.
They get a 2-week notice.
They get 2 weeks, and then during that period of time, staff of the Personnel Department, our employee benefits, that we meet with the employees, we give them information as relates to COBRA, unemployment insurance. There's a lot that they will be doing in order to effectively transition off of the city payroll.
But we still could make that decision not to actually terminate them during that period of time.
The effective date would be 2 weeks out. So if a decision were to be made that the layoff would be rescinded, then that would be another situation. However, this is the process that we're using.
Yeah, I'd like to see if we could have that discussion before that time.
Thank you, Mr. Kretz. If you would press your button again.
Okay.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you.
Mr. Cardenas, you're up next.
Yep. On my time, I'm writing my notes. Thank you very much, Madam President. So by the way, who prints the budget proposal that comes from the mayor, the big fat book? Do we print it here with the city printing shop, or do we go to Kinko's, or who prints the book?
We have our own publishing house that prints a budget book.
Okay, and the reason why I asked that question, because that's one of the things that's being contemplated right now. Do we get rid of our in-house, publishing / printing shop or what have you? And this is a perfect example of something that I would imagine that when you look at efficiencies and you look at trying to get things done and making sure that we can get important documents like this handled in an appropriate manner. And when I say appropriate, I'm talking about all kinds of things, not just having it printed properly, but making sure that we're not going out to a third party and people are leaking to the press what the book is saying or what have you. Those are our documents, and those are things that are proprietary to us. Naturally, they become public documents, but government has a responsibility of making sure that we control those kinds of things, not to hide anything, but to make sure that at the appropriate time, in the appropriate fashion, in the appropriate way, the public is notified. Giving somebody undue advantage on information that should be open to the public at the same time is a big issue. It's an issue with me, and I think that's a perfect example of how we have to understand that when people talk about neighborhood councils, give us their ideas of what our core responsibilities are and what they think that we should prioritize, et cetera, as a council and as a city, and then when we talk about, well, public safety is number one and all those things, at the same time, we also have to take in mind that there are a lot of responsibilities that are legal and a lot of responsibilities that support public safety, for example, that people don't see. And we have to make sure that all of those issues are handled and supported by the city or by any entity who has those legal responsibilities. So one of the things Councilmember Koretz asked a question about the Information Technology Department, yet at the same time, what we have to understand, council members, is that I believe that we have a responsibility. Sure, we should have an expectation that if we're talking about an item like this, any question can come up. We could say, well, how about ITA, or how about Park and Recs, or how about the libraries, or what have you. We shouldn't get too upset if the department head isn't sitting here in the chambers in case we have a question, because once again, if the department heads are sitting in the chambers, all of them, that means that they're not getting their other work done. So the fact of the matter is, if we have a certain question on an item that's as generic as this from a particular department, we should take on the responsibility of letting that department know that we have some questions and we'd like some people there to answer those questions. Again, I'm not saying that they should or shouldn't be here. All I'm saying is, for example, to the question to you, Miguel, are all of the department heads, do they have their office here in this building?
No, they don't. They're
spread all over the city, right? Yeah, all over the city. And do they all have their office right here in this building or in the east building right across the street from us?
No.
No, so we could have some department heads that actually are a few blocks away or a few miles away, right?
That's correct.
So that's just one thing I want to clarify, council members, is just because some department heads can hear this audio and then all of a sudden run downstairs and be here to answer a question, please don't assume that that's the standard that all department heads could actually meet if all of a sudden they hear their department or their name invoked by one of us. So I just want to put that into a perspective so that we can respect the fact that we all council members and the mayor, we have our office in this building. but not all of the department heads have their office in this building. So it's not like they can come here at a moment's notice. We need to understand that we should give them that responsibility and that courtesy of understanding that if we have a question for them, that we should try to give them as much time as possible for them to be here to answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Parks for the second time, then Mr. Koretz after Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hahn before Mr. Parks. Sorry, you got, I must have deleted.
Does that mean I have to sit down?
Yeah, you can relax for a second.
Thank you. I just had some questions about this. So, total, how many of these pink slips have been issued?
39.
39.
Right.
And I think, I'm looking at a layoff notification kind of graph or a sheet that you've given me, and I think maybe you could explain the idea of no displacement. What does that mean exactly?
That means that the employees who have been laid off do not have any bumping rights to another position because this is the only civil service position that they held.
So if there was no displacement, that means they're gone.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I'm concerned about, look, I realize this is desperate times. I realize we have never done this before, but frankly, I'm a little still frustrated, which I'm sure you are too, with this process. I'm frustrated because the list, and I've asked daily, who's going to get notified? What position do they hold? What facility are they at? How is that going to impact the public? And it's like pulling teeth to get that information. And I think that's what I'm having a problem with. And I think it has unintended consequences. We know for a fact, I talked about last week, the theater, the Warner Grand Theater. We heard that the main facility person there is got their 2-week notice. We realized, somebody mentioned to the public they would probably go dark because an RFP for entering into an agreement with a nonprofit, was probably going to be delayed. So those are things, I really still want a better working relationship. Like, tell us who is getting these notices, when they're getting them, what impact that's going to have, so we can work to see if there are ways that we can still mitigate some of these layoffs. For instance, I see on here art instructors, art center directors with no facility attached. And I know you're not wanting maybe to put names at some of these, but we need to know where you're talking about. I did find out the Watts Towers is going to be one where the art director is in jeopardy. Well, that's problematic for the community. And I guess part of what I want to know is, I know we're leaving this up to the general managers to decide. But I think that's, colleagues, where I'm having a hard time. I know we're not supposed to micromanage these layoffs. But at what point can we have any input? For instance, is it better to lay off the art director of the Watts Tower versus, a couple of part-time art instructors? Who gets to make that decision? I just feel like, colleagues, these are policy decisions on how these facilities are going to be able to minimally deliver services to the communities that have come to depend on them. I know we can't prevent all these layoffs, but is it better to lay off a recreation assistant or a child care worker versus an assistant general manager? At some point, colleagues, I really thought that a lot of these layoffs were going to come back to the City Council so that we could ultimately approve them again, but apparently that's not happening. That was my understanding, was it still had to come back to the City Council. But these layoff notices are going out. I was upset. Obviously, as you know, last week we laid off someone that was funded by the Harbor Department. These are the mistakes I don't think we should be making, and I feel like if there was more partnership with the council office, maybe we could mitigate some of these mistakes. And again, I think we can still deliver some of our services in these facilities if we do a better job of laying off 2 part-timers versus someone who's the director of the facility.
Ms. Hahn, if you would, press your button again. You're out of time while Ms. Whalen answers.
I think, first of all, we have to make certain that all members of the council understand that funding is not a consideration as it relates to who is going to be laid off. And it's a very fluid process. I can honestly tell you that we are working off of a list. We take that information, we do the layoff calculations, we know pretty much at the same time as we notify the department.
Right.
But I think that, as I've heard many times at this council meeting, time is not our friend.
I know that.
And so we are processing as quickly as possible. One of the things that we did was to build in some humanity into the post-layoff, because we're very concerned that these are our employees. I just laid off 12 people. And so I can tell you it is not anything that anyone, but it's very important that people be treated with dignity and that we give them every opportunity to sort this out, because it's just not a good thing. But as far as the coordination, we notify the departments as soon as we know, and I've been working with your office to let you know at the end of every day what the situation is going to be. We notify the departments, I misspoke earlier, we give the departments 24 hours to notify the individuals. And then the employee is put on administrative leave for 2 weeks, during which time they're handling the separation. And I agree with you that it would be great if more advance notice could be given. We're very concerned because we don't want to give out any names, and frankly, we don't know the assignments. So when we notify the departments, we want to make sure that the first person who knows is the department and the second is the employee, because we're so worried that somebody is going to hear this secondhand, and that would be devastating.
Well, I mean, I really appreciate you saying that, Maggie, and because, anybody who's ever been laid off knows it is an absolutely traumatic experience. And basically, your life comes crashing down. The rug is pulled out under you. 2 weeks to deal with COBRA or whatever. It's very unnerving, anybody that's ever gone through that. So I appreciate you saying that. I still feel like everyone is feeling anxious. I know I'm over. Everyone's feeling anxious, and I think as hard as we try, there's a lot of people out there who do not know their future and are very, very worried.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Santana, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah,
We'll go on to Mr. Rosendahl.
I just wanted to make a larger statement. I think as a blueprint, this is the first report, and we'll try to drill down more. But as a blueprint to see what the future reports are going to look like, I would use the initial 1,000 positions that we had recommended, because for the most part, this report is consistent with that, and that report was issued in January. In addition to that, a lot of the larger policy decisions, like the theaters, were discussed as part of the financial status report 3-year plan, and that should give you some form of reference. But I think your input is certainly helpful.
Why wasn't the RFP started earlier so that these theaters wouldn't be jeopardy going dark, if that's true?
Well, because we needed the decision from your council.
You can't say one or the other. Don't say everybody knew and then...
All right, Mr. Rosendahl, for the first time, and members, just to let you know, we are not taking an action on this item today, and this will be on the agenda again next week so that we can continue to get regular reports.
Thank you, Madam President. This is the first time we've actually had the rubber in the road hitting. The names are there in terms of the positions, and the reality has now hit us all. This is big time, no more BS, everything is clear and simple. But let me ask a couple of quick questions. Having been the background in cable television, Channel 35 and 36, I'm the one who hardwired them and created those channels for the cable industry. They're extremely valuable. Anybody who knows anything about channels know how powerful 750,000 potential households who could be watching this. I see the cutbacks in that department. to be extraordinary, and you either need Tony Agani or somebody here who knows how to run that place to come and explain how we can operate. Because to cut back on that is cutting back on the relationship between the constituents and the city, number one. That's key for informational purposes. And B, they're extremely valuable channels 35 and 36. I know that 36 has a lot of private-public partnership type strategies that can bring in revenue, but, you know, I know we can do our council meetings still, but a lot of the field shoots, a lot of the community operations are dramatically impacted by this. So can we get them in here to explain how that might impact the actual product out in the streets?
Yeah, yes, we could ask that they be here on Friday.
Have them come back on Friday. Now, when you look at these different positions, did somebody grill the different general managers about its impact on various things that they do? I mean, did somebody do that kind of exercise, or did we just accept what they threw at us?
No, it was a partnership with the general manager to identify priorities, and then from there establish a list. Thank you.
All right. Now, special funded folks in situations like that, I had a guy come in and tell me, I have 4 projects on the 405. One is the Skirble Center, one is the bridge over the 405, another one is the Sepulveda reverse lane, and these projects, personnel have either been let go or they're in special funds and they still furloughed them or let them go. We don't have the team of city people. We will have the worst gridlock, and we have a terrible gridlock on the west side as it is now. If these construction projects happen simultaneously, it's the perfect storm. Do we look at substantive issues when we decide how we move people around, like in DOT or some of the others?
I mean, we rely on the general manager. I mean, one of the things that we don't want to do is second-guess the expertise that the general manager has, and so I think every general manager proceeds with this task to try to mitigate any impact to actual services.
Okay, but please get back, because Michael Hunt is his name. It's not the gadfly. It is a union fellow that clearly pointed out that the loss of personnel will dramatically impact those 4 projects, which we can't afford to have that in already the most gridlocked area of the city. But that's an example of, you know, thinking through in its impact on services to community. It's obvious about the libraries, it's obvious about the parks, but when it comes to these construction projects, they're key to the flow. So could I get a report back on that one?
Well, I think those impacts are probably as a result of ERIP, because we don't have any public works on this list from what I could tell, but we could certainly go back and try to clarify
It's
that.
DOT and
transportation.
Yeah, and that's what we need to look at specifically, because we have these 4 projects happening at the same time. It affects Mr. Koretz's area as well as mine. We hug the 405 together.
I don't see any Department of Transportation.
But that is an action that I'm told is going to happen in the next thing. As Ms. Hahn was saying, it comes so quickly at us after the discussion, so I'd like that to be sort of a little more homework done on that.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Parks, and then I believe Mr. Wesson.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I have one question and then some directions. Miguel, could you tell us, when you're giving us these numbers today, if these are all numbers dealing with the first 1,000?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a reason why the police and fire civilians are not listed on this list, and will they be captured on subsequent lists? Go ahead.
We have a number of civilian positions from police. We're still waiting for notification from the department.
Okay. And then, Miguel, on the budget issue, if I understand, there's a large number of vacancies in civilians and police fire, and there's some likelihood that they could just be cut as opposed to laying people off.
That's true in fire in particular. I think the goal is to try to mitigate any layoffs with sworn personnel in the fire department, but actually eliminate positions in the process.
Okay. Let me just ask Miguel, and could you coordinate with, so we can get it on, and Jerry, on the council agenda as quickly as we can once the mayor produces that pre-budget list, so that the council is fully aware as quickly as possible. We get agendized. The other thing I'd ask Miguel on, could we come up with a matrix that would reconcile your two reports, the March 15th report and the February 24th report, where you can get a running count of the layoffs and then a corresponding dollar figure for this fiscal year and next fiscal year, so that we can be aware of when these positions leave, what will we be retrieving as it relates to both budget years in the sense of funding. And then, colleagues, for those who have a concern about positions or in the sense of the impact on departments, I would just suggest that you coordinate with the President's office and include that in that standing item number 4, which is set up to give you departments coming in talking about impacts impacts on their operating procedures based on these cuts, and use that as a vehicle as opposed to some of the questions that are asked on dealing with just the cuts. You can actually schedule the departments in on item 4. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Zine, then Mr. Wesson.
I jumped in front of you, Mr. West, because I'm wearing green today. Thank you.
Wait a minute. No, I was next. How did Zion get?
All right, then protest. Go ahead. You got it.
I mean, seriously, Zion.
They called me. I stood up.
I'll defer to you because you have a beard.
I did see his name on I saw the board, Mr. Wesson, and for whatever reason, he flipped the switch and got in there just about 10 seconds before
They already
you.
started my clock going. Anyway, last night I went to the swearing for the mayor of Beverly Hills. $18 million deficit in the city of Beverly Hills. Somehow they managed to shore up the services and not lay off anyone, but somehow saved $18 million. Now, obviously, Beverly Hills doesn't have the number of workers and employees that we have. Have we looked at other locations to see how they managed these huge deficits? I know the courts are facing millions of dollars, talking about restructuring our court system here in LA County. Sometimes we're in a vacuum when we're looking at this. Have we looked out to other jurisdictions? How are you folks coordinating in another jurisdiction when they're having similar budgetary problems? And I know as a city employee for 42 years, when you get in that environment and you want to have a career in civil service, you think there's security. While you're not going to be rich, there's security. And all of a sudden the boom comes, and the rippling effect where all the employees, whether they have 5 years or 10 years or they're a new employee. Have we looked around to other jurisdictions? And I understand my colleague's concern. I've got the same concern about these families when they get that slip that you no longer have employment. We know the unemployment rate keeps on increasing. The mortgage, the tuition for the kids, the food on the table. Have we gone out of our sphere and looked in other areas to say, how are they doing? How does Beverly Hills save $18 million and not lay off anyone and still continue services when we're talking about these massive terminations up to 4,000 folks?
We do. I had an opportunity several weeks ago to meet with many of my colleagues from the other major cities throughout the country, and we sort of spent a lot of time talking about how we're each dealing with our respective budget problems, and every major city, and certainly a lot of the smaller ones, are facing a similar crisis we are. This may come to a surprise to you, but in many ways we are ahead of what many other jurisdictions are doing. The fact that we essentially were able to close this year's $400 million deficit with no layoffs, and partnered with our partners in labor to mitigate that problem is something that is not common among municipalities. The various agreements that we reached with the coalition, with PPL, the furloughs that we implemented, that created a package that essentially resulted in the reducing of a deficit of nearly $400 million without any layoffs. What happened was that we saw a drop in our revenue that was anticipated beyond what we had identified as our deficit, and we simply don't have the time or the ability to make any further reductions beyond that. So we certainly have a lot to learn from other jurisdictions, but the city of Los Angeles has a lot to be proud of in terms of how it's managed this crisis so far.
So when it comes to the cost savings,
when it comes to, I hear 4,000 pink slips or salary reductions. Have other cities done that other than Las Vegas and San Francisco, talking about firing everybody and bringing them back at lower salaries or part-time employees? Have there been other components that have been focused to manage the services? Because obviously the services people expect, and I refer to the taxes that people are paying are up here. We're not reducing taxes as we reduce services. The taxes stay here, the services start to diminish. Do we find any other formulas other than 4,000 or salary cuts? Is there anything in between that the other cities have done that help salvage this to deliver those services and maintain that to the people who pay the taxes?
Well, Mr. Zine, clearly the CAO and my office as well are talking to other cities. In the final analysis, it's the number of people you have or what you pay them. Phoenix, for example, announced a number of layoffs and were able to get agreements from their police and fire unions for salary rollbacks. I'm sure you heard about San Francisco, the mayor proposing to lay off 15,000 and then rehire them at a smaller work week, which in essence cuts the salaries. So, I mean, either salary reductions and union concessions or layoffs are really happening across the board. I will say, obviously this doesn't apply to Beverly Hills, but one thing that is different in California than in many states is Prop 218. Cities in California don't have the same kind of flexibility to raise revenue to continue services that cities in many other states have, because you've got to go to the voters for virtually everything. So that is an additional constraint on your options to be able to provide services and balance the budget.
But we are looking outside our sphere into other areas to see if we can come up with some other programs.
And they're asking us.
They're asking us, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. And again, I just wanted to remind our members that this is not an item we will be voting on. This will continue to stay on the agenda on a weekly basis so that we can get weekly updates. And with that, Mr. Wesson, for the first time.
Call a question.
All right, Madam Clerk, we've had a request from Mr. Wesson to call the question. Can you open the roll on that, please? Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 3 no.
That fails.
All right, the discussion continues. Mr. Koretz.
Yeah, I know on some of these, we had also talked about trying not to impact our revenue, and there are a few which I have questions about the revenue impacts. First of all, there's one personnel position, a safety engineering associate, with the potential impacts and increase in accidents. Do we think has anyone done an analysis to determine whether this is likely to save us money or cost us money?
It's hard to say. It's hard to prove what we're going to save by no longer having this position or what it's going to cost us. We have a very small safety staff in the first place. I believe that we still have a remaining safety engineering associate. I am requesting an industrial hygienist be exempted from the managed hiring process so that we can keep together a small cadre of people to be able to address these plans. But I have to say that I don't think that the elimination of one safety engineering associate is going to have a considerable impact on the city's safety program.
Are we confident at all that this is likely to save us money? This doesn't seem like the smartest place to be looking for a layoff in a position that, in theory, reduces accidents and saves us money.
Sir, the whole personnel department is, in essence, a risk manager for the city of Los Angeles. And while I agree with you and I want to hang on to every position that I can hang on to, I can't sit here in good conscience and say that this one position is going to make a huge difference. I need people in many, many areas. The personnel department has been cut considerably, primarily through ERIP. This is just one position, and I have to meet my budget numbers. And with all due respect to my colleague here, he's not cutting me any slack. If you will notice, the personnel department is slated for 100 layoffs.
Yeah, again, as the risk management department for the city, as you point out, this again may not be one of the smarter areas for us to be looking, because if we're reducing our risk management abilities, again, are we actually saving money and running ourselves better, or are we heading in the wrong direction and winding up with a net loss?
Well, my primary focus at this time is to manage the layoffs. And when we get beyond that point, I will regroup. But at this point in time, the safety engineering associate, while I'm not suggesting that this position doesn't provide great value to the city, it isn't my highest priority.
Okay, and one other question relating to the animal license canvassing process. I understood that we were looking to get information from DWP to easily identify unlicensed animals. Would that then enable us to do this in a cost-effective enough way that the animal canvassers would be paying for themselves, and so again, or even more than paying for themselves, so that we would be incurring a net loss by cutting the canvassers that bring in revenue?
That's something that we're looking into. Right now, they're not paying for themselves. They're still running a deficit just as a program in itself. So I know that direction was given a couple of weeks ago. I'll check in to see where we're at with that.
Can we do that before we actually pink slip these people and then realize afterwards that they would at least be able to pay for themselves, if not more so?
These individuals are coalition members, so they won't be impacted in the next several months. So certainly prior to the end of the fiscal year, we'll come back to you on that response.
We will definitely have an analysis before we pink slip anybody with these positions.
That is correct.
Councilmember, I would like to take the opportunity to explain that even when people are laid off, they are put on a reserve list according to their seniority, and when we're hiring, they are taken off of the reserve list one at a time. So even if someone were to be laid off, the ability to rehire them is very straightforward.
No, I get that, but the ideal is if we knew we were going to need them, you wouldn't want to can them and rehire them. You'd want to identify that before you pink slip them.
And I agree. I just want you to be assured that there is a very, very organized way of bringing people back. It's very easy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koretz. Please press your button again if you'd like to talk. Mr. Cardenas is our next speaker.
This question is to Maggie. Are you the person we should be asking questions to as far as what the impact is to the public of people being laid off or positions being deleted?
Not citywide. You can certainly ask me that question as it relates to my department.
Exactly, because you head one department.
Correct.
Although, unfortunately, you have the bad news of having to deal with all the departments and doing the work that nobody enjoys to do, which is to have to be part of the notification process and letting them know that that position's been eliminated or what have you. But you do not run departments. So if we have a question, for example, Miguel, about what the effects are on Park and Recs or the library department or what have you, or a particular facility in one of our districts, that question really goes to the department, right?
Right. We summarize what they tell us, but in order to drill down and find out the more specific impact, I would strongly recommend directing those questions to the general manager.
Okay. And the reason why I ask those questions is because at times like this, it can feel very frustrating. It can feel very uncomfortable to have to deal with these things or what have you. But one of the things I want to make sure that we do is that we make sure that we as policymakers direct our energy and our questions to the right place, because we do want the right answers. And the last thing I would want to happen is for one of us to go ahead and try to get someone to try to ad-lib and try their best to give us the best answer they can, and in reality that isn't the best answer. And perhaps that is not the person we should be barking at. That is not the person we should be asking the question to. And the fact of the matter is, what I want to instill in all of you is to please understand that when somebody puts you in that position, please don't assume that we all agree with that person who's putting you in that position. stand your ground and just give us the truth. I can't answer that question to that degree. I can only tell you so much. If you have further questions, I'm not the person who can give you that detailed answer. However, if you talk to the department, they could probably give that to you. I say that because we've already witnessed that here. We've already witnessed it here. And the people are watching, and sometimes it gains applause or what have you, but I just want to remind you that some of us here do not appreciate that. Some of us here do not agree that that is the right way for us to get to the right answers. Some people might use those tactics, but I just want to let you know, certainly for me, I don't appreciate that, and it's not productive. And to put you in that position, to ask you questions that you don't have the authority to answer, or you're not the right authority to be answering that tertiary or that detailed question, please understand that don't assume that there's a team of people here who agree that you should try to ad-lib and try to just wing it, so to speak. I've seen it happen, and it doesn't lead to anything good. All it does is create more problems and then more confusion, and then it's just not productive. So just want to let you know, please stand your ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Koretz, for the third time.
Yeah, two more questions and then I'm done. The ambulance billing unit, we're eliminating that, or many of these positions, if not, it looks like we're eliminating the whole unit. What are we doing with those functions? Or are we doing less billing and collection? What's happening there?
There's, my office is currently completing a report, and that's a recommendation from the fire department to contract out that function.
And for what reason? They think that it's more cost effective? What's
both in terms of the management of the program as well as the collections that we could receive. Overall, I haven't seen the report, so I'm reluctant to discuss it beyond that, but that's scheduled. Hopefully that report will be completed in the next several days.
And last question, I thought the council had voted direction to be given a last chance to sign off on layoffs before they were done. Is that not happening because we don't have the authority and the mayor has the ability to override us? Or is there some other reason? Because we've never really addressed the fact that we voted that direction and it isn't being upheld.
Well, the mayor has directed the general managers to proceed with layoffs, but in my interpretation, and certainly others could chime into that, the action that was taken, I don't recall the date, but, well, actually it's on this memo, on February 18th, which proceeded forward with the original 1,000 and asked for the identification and continue forward with an additional 300 allowed for that to take place. The elimination of those positions for the additional 3,000 will be done as part of the budget process.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but this looks like the closest I've seen to actually having a report that we would expect to have given direction on, where we actually have a sense of who's being laid off and what the impacts are. I don't recall getting something like this before.
If I could quickly address your question, you certainly have every right, and departments are responsible for reporting back directly to you when you ask for information. Specifically with regard to layoffs, however, the department heads do have the authority to lay off, not the mayor, the department heads. The council wouldn't have authority to stop that unless the council were to adopt an ordinance that established a process requiring final council approval. That, of course, would require going through the drafting of the ordinance process and mayoral concurrence, etc. But absent having an ordinance in place that specifies the process for that and requiring council approval, the council doesn't have the authority to simply stop the layoffs.
So we don't have any direct say-so on who is actually laid off? the department heads can lay off whoever they want and whatever numbers.
Not specifically. Now, obviously, when the budget's coming up for 2010 and beyond, really on an ongoing basis, you do have the authority to appropriate, and you do have the authority to fund programs that you want funded. And if department heads are not complying with that, you certainly have the authority to pull the funding in the UB or some other technique. But in terms of departments managing within their budget and the positions they identify for layoffs, that is with the department head's authority.
Thank you.
Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. I was just wondering how our discussions are going, if you can talk a little bit about with our unions. And again, it was our understanding that maybe we could avoid layoffs if we got some concessions on a 10% pay cut. Are those discussions happening? Can you talk about them?
Well, that specific direction hasn't been given to me as by the ERC yet or from this body, but we have had several conversations with the various bargaining units, and I won't go into much detail on it. We haven't received any indication that a bargaining unit is interested in taking any reductions as a way of mitigating the layoffs.
Okay.
And any more specific than that, I recommend going to closed session.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. No more speakers in the queue. Madam Clerk, we will continue this item till next week.
And that's correct.
No action necessary today. What is the next item?
And the next item is item number 4, and that was called Special 4 Cards, and again, this is an item that has no action, and it will be agendized again next Wednesday for reports.
Dr. Williams. I don't see Dr. Clyde Williams here, and Arnold Sachs is here. Arnold Sachs is our next speaker. And then after Mr. Sachs is Janine Watkins. Is Janine Watkins here?
Do I go now? After? Okay.
Relative to specific layoff plans, again, positions to be eliminated. Are these positions that have been funded but not filled? And if so, excuse me, if so, where does the funding go after this? I mean, it goes back to the general fund. But the reduction in services, we haven't heard anything about that. With these movement of personnel, you heard discussions how people would be moved from one position to another. How does that affect the services to the public? We need to have some of that brought forth now. In addition to just the transferring and movement of personnel, we need to know that when a personnel is transferred or moved laterally or dropped down, what that effect on the public is, as well as what savings it is to the city. You've heard a lot of discussion here regarding knowing what will happen when positions are eliminated, how that affects the public. But we don't hear that. The public doesn't hear that. You get notices to the department heads are going back, scrubbing their figures, but nobody is looking at it and saying, how does that affect the public? What will happen with the lines? What will happen with the services? You heard somebody mention the layoffs at the courts, and there's concerns at the county with how will that affect the amount of money brought in through from tickets. If they're eliminating hours at the courthouses, how will that affect the funding that's generated through revenue that's brought in from traffic tickets and citations? Nobody's discussing this. This is so half-assed. And the time for the discussion is not now. The time for the discussion should have occurred a year ago.
Thank you very much. Ms. Watkins. Mr. Sachs, you've used your time for today. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I got 2 minutes to talk fast. Okay, I'm here representing Watts. The Watts Towers has over 500,000 people from around the world that come, and I know that the city of LA leading industry is tourism and cultural tourism. I don't understand how the Watts Towers Arts Center and the Charles Mingus Arts Center got on this list for closure. Janice, if I can get a meeting with you, I'd appreciate it. The staff there has done an exemplary job with 250,000 to 500,000 people coming to visit them. They were understaffed and underfunded prior to your crisis and the mismanagement of the funds in this city. And I'm asking this council to pay attention. If you continue to cut education, art education in this city, you're going to have to hire more police officers. You're going to have to hire more fire departments because the art in this city is being crushed in a way that is not productive. So I know you've got a hard job to do, but we really need you to take a look at that national state monument and to protect it. It does not need to be privatized, just like the William Ray Center. Photography Center didn't need to be privatized. It doesn't exist anymore when it got privatized. So we'll be back because I don't think the community even knows that this is taking place. So if we have to continue to come back, we will. But that little bit of funding is not going to make a difference. We want you not to privatize our center, and I did it in less than 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No further speakers. Mr. Koretz, followed by Mr. Cardenas.
Yeah, I had a question which probably would have been more appropriately under the previous item, but the topic is close enough, which is whether staff has looked at whether the state WARN Act dealing with layoffs, mass layoffs of 75 persons or more applies to our present situation, including the requirement for a 60-day notice to various agencies and to the folks affected.
Do we have staff here who can answer that question? I don't believe we do. We can hold
So we don't have any staff on this agenda
It is going to
item.
be on the agenda again next week. If you would like, we can hold the question until next week.
I'll ask that question next week.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much. To the person who came here to speak on this issue of the cutting of the arts and services to our communities, I want to thank you for coming. And you said that you are going to come back. I really, really hope that you do continue to come back, and I hope that you continue to remind people about what you were just talking about and how important it is to our communities, and bring more and more and more people to come back, because unfortunately the people who need the services the most unfortunately sometimes tend to be the most quiet and the most humble, and the ones that actually don't believe that government will listen to them. So thank you for coming forward and speaking on behalf of all of these communities, and at the same time, please help us in communicating with everybody who's being affected so that they can come and they can speak and they can actually remind us about how we're affecting their lives and how they need these services. Because unfortunately, the people who speak the loudest tend to get our attention because they're in our face, yet at the same time, those people who don't speak enough are the people who need to remind us of some of the other reasons why we're here and some of the things that we have to take into account when we're making these kinds of decisions. So thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again and again and again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cardenas. No further speakers in the queue at this time. So, Madam Clerk, we will continue this item also until next week?
Correct.
Thank you very much. Next item.
Next item is item number 9, that was called special for cards. And just for council's information, Harbor Department has submitted a report on this item as well, and it has been distributed to the council.
All right. The only card in the box today is for Arnold Sachs. He's used up his allotment of time, so there are no additional public speaking cards. No council people in the queue at this time. You said that there's been a report delivered?
That's correct. The report from one department, Water and Power, is on the agenda, and Harbor Department has also submitted a report, and these are actually just note and files.
Is there staff here to present those reports?
I don't believe so.
Oh, you are? Yeah, they are. Here's representatives from the Department of Water and Power here. If you can come to the center table and make a synopsis or presentation quickly for the record.
2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 2 John Dennis, former Director of Supply Chain Services for the City of LA Department of Water and Power.
Anselmo Collins, Director of Supply Services for Water and Power.
The filed item that we had there today, as far as the report, we followed up on your action item. We did a review of all the service-related contracts that we have currently in place. We have 284 active service-related contracts. We evaluated those. They do range in duration from just a few months up to 5 years in duration. Prior to award of these contracts, we did follow the 1022 Charter Section process for evaluating if it was economical or feasible for contractors or to be done outside of DWP. But as we did another review of those particular contracts, there were some that were not considered any further for opportunities for city service. Those were such as specialty services that are required by the original equipment manufacturers to ensure their warranties. There are some service contracts that are in there that require extensive or lengthy licensing and training, such as qualified electrical workers or to perform work safely in specialty areas such as energized facilities or stations. Also, those not considered were those that were remote locations outside of the Los Angeles County area, and some of those were also outside of the state. And then there's also not considered were those that were infrequent or intermittent on-demand needs, not requiring full-time staff so that we could employ them. But of those that were considered, we did look at those 284. We did identify the following types of contracts being considered further, and we are in discussion with representatives from the different departments on some contracts that pertain to paving, asphalt concrete paving, pavement and curb cutting services, some selected maintenance services, and also some vegetation management around our energized systems. And then lastly is our fully operated backhoe and dump truck equipment rentals. And so we are in the process, our managers are working with the different bureau heads to work with them and identify opportunities for that work to be performed.
Mr. Gretz.
Yes, we've just cut a lot of folks in our urban forestry arena. Is there any reason that those folks couldn't be digested in the DWP system and replace contractors that do tree trimming, especially since they do it in a very cost-effective way at the city?
The challenge right now that our staff is working with the folks on possibly integrating people into those crews. We do have currently 20 DWP crews that are qualified for doing the tree trimming. Each crew is made up of 2 people, so we have 40 people there from DWP performing the tree trimming work. And right now, our managers are in the process of bringing in another individual person to work on that crew, so bringing in as many as 20 other people to work with them. The training process, the difference is to work around the energized facilities that they do. The purpose of the tree trimming is to cut back around the power lines and work in those areas for clearance purposes. And so it will be about a 6 to 18 month time period before they can work independently and be qualified electrically to work around those energized facilities. So it is a matter of time and getting them up to speed to integrate them. But that's the plan right now, is to have as many as 20 come on board and work with our crews.
Now, the DWP crews that you referred to, are those on staff or are these outside contractors?
These that are 20 of those are DWP crews. That's correct.
How much of this same type of work is done by additional outside contractors?
We have 50 contract crews that are also on board, and we're trimming overall about 140 to 180,000 trees per year that we trim back on our electrical lines.
Is there any reason we wouldn't try to train the entire group that's being laid off by the city and have those, once they're trained, all be picked up and replace some of those contract crews?
Again, I would have to defer to our managers on that particular item. This is the information I have for you today. Right now in their discussion, the extent of that they're looking at were to bring on 20 would be a saturation level of those staff.
Can we have a report back on whether or not, and if not, why not, the ability to eliminate contract crews and hire the entire group from the city?
Is that a request?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to have that report come back to the council when we have these items next week.
Okay. For clarity, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I'd like to have them report back on whether or not the entire group of urban forestry folks that are being laid off by the city could be digested by the DWP, and whether or not we could eliminate the contract crews that could be replaced by those city employees, and if not, why not?
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Ms. Hahn. Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. I know we're talking about DWP right now, but apparently we also got a report from the Harbor Department. I don't know if the CAO is still here. Okay. Because what I'd like to do, I mean, we just got this. Well, no, what I would like is for the CAO to analyze this, because we were told at the Harbor Department that out of 151 contracts, only 37 were identified where it could be performed by city employees. I would like our CAO to take a look at this, analyze this, and then my question is, now what? What are we going to do with this information that we know that 37 contracts at the Harbor Department can be done by city employees? Are we, what's happening now, I guess is what I'm asking. So either continue this, maybe this report, and get an answer on that.
Okay, would you like to then request then the CAO to come back with a report on that?
Yes.
And we'll continue this. Okay.
Thank you. All right, do we need to do that as a motion, or just a request is sufficient?
I believe that could be done, that can be a verbal motion.
Okay. That'll be without objection, and we'll continue this for how long, Madam Clerk?
I believe the request was to have this on again next week.
All right, Mr. Rosendahl, do you want to wait until next week then? Yeah. Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Next item is item number 10. That was called special by Council Member Hahn, and there is an amending motion that has been distributed to the council members.
Ms. Hahn, you have an amending motion on item 10?
Yes.
Ms. Hahn, do you have an amending motion on item 10?
Right. That was really disingenuous. Okay, what is this one?
Rec and Parks.
Okay, Rec and Parks. Can we have some Rec and Park? Virginia, would you like to come to the table?
This is about consolidating the department and the GMs, remember?
Yeah, what's my... Obviously, it's a tough situation for all of us. I know you all having a tough time, and many of the services that come under Recreation Parks clearly are in such, direct relationship with our public and our constituents, and they're probably, I'm getting the most calls in my office about what's happening in recreation parks, from child care workers to curators at museums. We heard someone come down today to talk about the Watts Towers. I guess one of the overall questions is, the decisions that you made to lay off certain people versus, when I look at some of your employees, I'm wondering why certain decisions weren't made. For instance, 3 assistant general managers, could maybe one of those assistant general managers go and keep someone like, an art director or curator in a museum? Were those decisions looked at?
Regina Adams, Executive Officer for Recreation and Parks. When we were first tasked with coming up with 125 full-time positions, that's what we were directed to do, identify 125 full-time positions out of the 1,000 original positions identified for layoff. What we did was we looked at our operations. One of the things that we looked at, we were trying to identify, of course, what was core, what's non-core.
Right.
And then the other thing that we looked at was what were we getting, what was general funded, what was not general funded.
Right.
We were originally put together, and we also were trying to look at it from our experience before the council recently about, some other items. We were trying to look at it as a business model as well.
Right.
Now, all of the services that we provide to the public, anything that we reduce or eliminate is going to be felt.
Right.
But what we did ask, for example, for our child care services, what we looked at was that we looked at our licensed child care services across the city. Right now, without adding indirect cost, it cost us over $7 million to provide the services to about 900 children. We are only operating at about 59% capacity, and we're only bringing in about $2 million. So in essence, for all of our programs, we usually do subsidizing for the services we provide. We never go after full cost recovery. But in this current economic situation, when we looked at our licensed child care, what we looked at was, can we still provide some level of services to the public, but maybe in a different way? And so what we were looking at was maybe moving toward unlicensed. So when it came to our child care, and also with the positions, of course,
Because what's the difference between licensed and unlicensed?
Unlicensed
more
means
staff members per child? Is that?
Yes, the ratios, there are much more requirements, and also, too, the number of hours that you're allowed to operate. But what we looked at was, for our purposes, of course, this was a difficult decision for us, for any of our employees, to have to put any positions on a list. But what we looked at was, could we still provide a level of service to the public in a different way and during different hours and so forth? So what we were looking at was moving away from licensed child care to unlicensed child care. Now, what that meant was that there are some employees who are in proprietary positions and classifications, such as child care directors, child care associates, and so forth, and they are there specifically for providing licensed child care. If we're looking at moving toward unlicensed child care, then that means that we would not necessarily have to just use those classifications, and we could use our more generic classifications, such as our recreation coordinators
What does
and
that mean to
assistants
the, what
and
does
so
that
forth.
mean to the public? Does that mean child
That
care
means
is
that
going
we
away?
could still provide the service, but we could use another level of classification to provide it. And so
this outcry that we're getting that we're ending child care in Los Angeles is not accurate.
No, it's not.
So every one of our facilities, for instance, Peck Park, does that child care continue?
Yes, we had no intent.
Before school, after school?
Well, we weren't really doing many things before school. That's the thing.
Excuse me, say that again?
We weren't providing many services. We had already changed a few months ago as to the hours that we were providing the service. We were moving more toward the after-school level of services.
And we're still picking kids up from school?
That's our intention. We still hope to be able to do that. And we had no intentions of closing down any of our centers. We still were going to be providing these services out of those child care centers.
And what about when the public says, I understand you're not applying for some of these federal grants for child care, for licensed child care. Is that true that we've just quit applying for those?
No, we have not. We have not. Also, what happened to us, of course, with the state's current budget situation, what has also happened back in October, we lost almost a $500,000 grant from the state. And that was also another factor that we had to take into consideration.
Let me ask another question. What was the directive to just lay off full-time as opposed to part-time? Why are we not looking at part-time?
Well, for the last couple of years, I don't know, the council may remember, we came before the council a couple of years ago when we started. We were looking at our financial situation, and we had attempted to try to let go some part-time employees. And from that point on, we were directed, and the words were, to not harm part-time employees.
From who? Who were you directed to?
That was in a document that we received. There was a question and answer document that was put together in the CAO. But it was also two discussions that were before this body, and so we were told that we were not to harm any part-time employees. And so the directive that
Do you have that document?
I don't have it with me, but we can get it.
Yeah, because I can't seem to find that direction anywhere.
We can provide that to you.
Because, again, we had Janine Watkins come down here from Watts and wondering why an art director was being laid off, as opposed to, I know there's 3 or 4 part-time tour guides. I think we have those a lot of our museums and centers. There's tour guides versus the director. And I think there are people that are questioning whether or not we can maybe keep the director and maybe let go a couple of the tour guides and feel like we could still provide the same amount of services, whereas when you let the director go...
You're over.
I know, her answers were
they were very good.
10 minutes long.
Yeah, that's okay.
I
press your button again. Just press your button one more time.
I don't like this new system. It's like her answers went on and on.
I apologize. All right, thank you.
I'll press it again. But
all right, press it again. Mr. Cardenas and his baby friend.
Yes, speaking of of childcare, this is Erica's daughter, Amaritz. Hello, say hello. So, what are the ages of children that we care for in our facilities?
Kevin Regan, Assistant General Manager, Recreation and Parks. We provide care for children from the age of 1 year old to between 1 and 5. That's the preschool age. And we also go from 5 to about 13.
Okay, so basically one of the criteria, I'm assuming, because I've had to deal with childcare, my wife and I, is that they need to be potty trained technically before we can accept them?
In our programs, that is correct.
So Amaris is about 4.5 months, so her peers are not included yet?
No. Not in the programs that we currently offer.
The reason why I ask those questions, and I want to point out some of those little details, once again, it's very easy to assume that this is easy to provide child care or what have you. There's reasons why they need to be potty trained before they can get involved in child care, and yet at the same time, if you're talking about a parent, especially a single mother, who wants to go back to work, needs to go back to work, they need to find child care. And for us to provide safe and healthy environments for them is extremely critical, not only to the community, but more critical, just dire critical for that particular mother, for that particular baby, for that particular family. And the reason why I want to point that out is once again, we're dealing with an issue that sounds pretty simple when you think about it. Well, child care, so what's the big deal? You take care of children. No, there's a lot of legalities involved, technicalities involved, etc., which gets to my other question is, can you repeat what the amount of investment there is in our child care system that we're utilizing or implementing, and also how many children are being cared for?
We operate, our capacity is a little over 1,500, and currently we have about 900 children in the program, so we're operating about 59% of capacity. Also, too, before we add indirect costs, our direct costs alone are over $7 million, but through the child care program, we're only bringing in revenue of about $2 million. So we have been subsidizing over $5 million. When you add in the indirects, that could take it up to about $7 million that we're actually subsidizing for this program, and we're not in a position to be able to do that any longer.
So if we were running at full capacity, just the direct costs alone, it's costing us about $5,000 a year to take care of a child, roughly?
At least.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things that we also need to understand is, in this country, that's why we have such a system that we have is, if a family, if a community is going to be able to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, it's really kind of impossible to do it by yourself. For example, if you have a mother who's making $10 an hour, then she's only making about, say, less than $20,000 a year. And if she's having to dedicate $5,000 to $10,000 a year to child care, then it really doesn't behoove her to go to work. She might as well stay home with her child and then perhaps depend on government to give her money instead of going to work, fully depend on government so that she can survive and feed her child, etc., and perhaps stay with her child. So the reason why I want to mention those things is because this is a very complicated responsibility. We are providing a service that perhaps in some neighborhoods it's not that big a deal, but in the poorest of neighborhoods in the city of Los Angeles, this is the difference between people being able to live a life of dignity and having their children in a safe place versus putting themselves and their children in a situation that we as society should not accept, or we as society, if we can, we should do something about it. And I'm glad that you clarified that even though there's a lot of consternation about closing down child care facilities, you did say earlier that we're not closing down our child care facilities, we're just going to a different business model as to how to keep those facilities open. My last question, Madam President, is this: why is it that we're only operating at less than 60% capacity?
Well, currently with the economic situation, we are seeing our enrollment decreasing because people are losing their jobs. And so that's part of the problem.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad we have this discussion because I think there was a lot of people who thought we were ending child care at some of our facilities, and we know that would put a lot of people in a very difficult position. Back to, we're looking for the part-time document because we haven't really seen that if it was okay for you to begin to look at part-timers, would you change your layoff strategy?
Well, at this point, just to let you know that our part-time employees are coalition represented, so they wouldn't be harmed, at least up through June 30th.
Okay.
When we presented our information for the layoffs, we did have in there, although it stated 125 positions, it was really 132 real people, because we did include some part-timers in there. What we had at the time, we included, for our child care program, we actually included about 15 part-timers in there as well.
Okay, one of the things when I'm looking at some of your management positions, wondering if, again, while we're reinventing ourselves and making consolidations and looking at, there are a lot of duplication of functions in the city, looking that you actually have a personnel director and an accountant, are those positions that maybe could be done by other departments so we could save some of these recreation jobs? Can we have a centralized pool of these types of functions, maybe citywide? I mean, why does Recreation Park need a personnel?
First of all, for our operations and what we deal with, especially since we have so much contact with the public, we really believe that it's more beneficial for us to have our own dedicated staff to provide those services. Of course, we've been participating in all discussions regarding any type of consolidations, whether it's accounting, IT, and so forth. Right. We've been involved in those discussions. Of course, our preference would be to maintain our own dedicated staff.
But at the expense of a recreation director, someone in the Watts Towers, someone at Banning Museum, someone at the Drum Barracks. Is it really more important to you to have your own internal personnel director at this point? I mean, I think what we're trying to do is save the jobs that really we think are in most direct relationship to our public, and it brings in revenue. I think, I'm very worried about the curators at all our museums in the harbor area. We believe those museums bring tourists to the harbor area. We believe ultimately that brings revenue. So if you ask me, would I rather you have a personnel director internally or, a curator at one of the museums? There's no choice for me. So, is that still something that you could look at a little more, looking at some of those functions now? Again, we're reinventing ourselves. When it's good times, that sounds like a great idea. When we're in bad times, I think we're going to come out looking very different in all of our departments, and we're looking to consolidate some of those functions, have other departments do some of those functions. We're trying to, obviously close this budget gap, but in a way that, still maintains at least a minimum level of service to the public. Is that something you could look at?
We definitely can look at that, but for example, for our human resources section, we were always, for a department our size, we were always had a very, very small staff, and we have just also lost staff through the early retirement programs and so forth. So even for the staff side that we originally had, it's already shrunk. So, but as we're looking at these decisions and as we're trying to reinvent ourselves, we're looking across the department at every level and every position.
Right, but no offense, obviously, anybody sitting at the table, but I think you're allowed 4 assistant general managers. Is that pretty much the same as most departments in the city?
It all depends. I can't compare ourselves to others, but for Kevin and I sitting here...
you just got through saying you think for your department you're kind of short-staffed.
Yes, we've always been, yes. And even though for us to have 4, one was just recently added this fiscal year, but it was never filled. And because our general manager realized that this was not the time and this was not the place, and our department shrinking, he made a decision not to fill this additional
Well, I guess
position.
from my perspective, again, since we're not getting, a chance to actually okay all of the layoffs, I would personally ask you to go back and re-look at your department and look again on, is this the right time to keep some of those positions as opposed to those who are out there serving the public, which you do so well. I mean, your department is one that the community loves, respects, needs, has come to. The letters I am getting personally about some of your employees who interact with the public are glowing. And I'm not sure they would even know the name of the personnel director.
They probably would.
I think that's what I'm saying right now.
Yes.
So I would ask that you go back and take another look at how you're really proposing these layoffs.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I have an email here, just as an example. I've gotten hundreds of emails, and everywhere I go, a constituent comes up to me, and I'm very accessible about the parks. And let me quickly read it. It says here, due to budget crisis, we understand that the mayor has proposed a series of layoffs of city employees, about 1,100 to come from Rec and Park. While we understand that the city is in a financial crisis and needs to make some painful decisions, we ask you to reconsider this. The rec centers provide terrific activities that keep kids busy and out of trouble. Because of Mar Vista Park, my kids have played flag football, basketball, soccer, and baseball. In addition, they've taken guitar and art classes and gone to sport camps in the summer. The staff is terrific as well. The Department of Rec and Park offers a needed service to the community. Many parents cannot afford to send their kids to more expensive programs or camps. Without these services, many more kids will be roaming their neighborhoods looking for something to do. Not a good thing. Please reduce the amount of cuts in the department. That obviously says it all. We've had a lot of people coming in here saying it. My colleague Tony Cardenas was just talking about the impact on communities that he represents as well. I know my Mar Vista folks would love to do whatever they can to partner with it. We heard you say unlicensed daycare workers or something like that. Could you explain that? Because if we can bring in more people, or if we can do public-private partnerships, I don't want to close any parks. I would like to find a way that some of the folks who might be on the pink slip list could stay if we could find local funding or do fundraisers or cake sales or bake sales. Because I can't tell you, I'm sure I speak for every colleague of mine, the parks are an intervention prevention strategy, period. They're cheaper than a cop arresting somebody. And obviously it's healthier for the child to have that growing up opportunity with that kind of support. So think out of the box with me right now. How do we make a public-private partnership or relax some of the requirements that allow us to keep them staffed and open? I mean, I'm just throwing it out of the box.
Well, we're always seeking partnerships with whomever presents something to us. But the one thing I would like to just state here is that, as we've been contacted by various people in state, we have been contacted by some people stating that they would like to be able, is there a way that they can provide donations to save a particular individual? As you heard previously from the personnel, general manager and so forth, we would welcome any donations. However, with the city's policy, as far as when it goes to layoffs and displacement rights and so forth, you cannot target an individual. You can target a position that you might like to try to save, but not an individual. So even if for the public there's a particular employee, and of course all of our employees are loved by the public, but if there's a particular individual that someone comes to us and says, what can we do to save person A's position, we have to make it very clear to them, you cannot particularly save person A. You might be able to save a position.
No, I understand that, and obviously that's the way it is. But more importantly this way, say for instance a park has 8 folks who work the park over a period of a week, 8 different people. And the pink slips are going to go to a couple, 3 of them, potentially. Can we, through the private sector, have volunteers? We'll call them volunteers, but they might be paid by this not-for-profit or partnership, and put them back in there rather than hit the street if they were good workers and our community loves them. And obviously our goal is to keep the park open and vibrant. How do you do that?
Yes, we can. We do a balancing act. We have thousands of volunteers already that help our department and the residents for the city. The one thing that we have to be careful of is that when we're providing services, because of the current labor MOUs, we have to be careful about what's being provided and how it's being provided and who's providing it, just so that we don't have any issues with the labor unions that represent the employees as well. But we definitely can look at it.
So do me a favor, look at it. I'm not speaking for any other district at the moment, but selfishly speaking, my parks in my district, look at where there might be layoffs, how we could deal with the unions if there is an issue, and how community groups who I know want to step to the plate to see that library or that park open.
But we would ask anyone in the public who has any ideas to contact, if it's a particular policy, contact that director, provide the information so it can make it back to us, and we can get in contact them and see what we might be able to do.
Okay. In the meantime, if you could give me the data on my parks and where they stand within this layoff process going forward, so I know exactly what we can do. Because anecdotal doesn't work anymore. I have to know if X park is going to lose Y people and what the community activist groups who live around it might be able to do to keep it going.
That's going to be a little bit difficult for us because right now we're losing hundreds of employees through the early retirement and transfers and so forth. And if there are going to be additional layoffs, and so right now we don't know, it's difficult for us to be able to tell any council member what their parks and areas are going to look like, because we're trying to, and also too, if employees are laid off across the city, there will be employees bouncing, maybe back to recreation and parks, and employees going out of recreation and parks. It's very difficult for us to right now to tell what we're going to look like and how we can disperse the remaining resources amongst the various parks.
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, though, Memorial Day is my cutoff point. That is when the summer really begins. It's already started here in sunny Southern California, but frankly, schools are out, this and that and the other. The summer is upon us. So we've got to know something, I hope, in 30 days or so we know how to plan for the summer coming.
One of the things that we're looking at for the summer, since that's also our busiest season, is our intentions are all of the pools that are operational, we intend to try to have all of those pools operational for the summer. We may have a 1-week delay as to when we open them, but we are trying to make sure that we can, all of our pools that are operational, that we can provide that service through the summer and in the summer camps as well. So we're trying to prepare for that right now.
But do get me some data because I want to find a way to bridge so we can keep things going.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Final speaker in the queue is Mr. Cardenas.
I just wanted to clarify, one of my colleagues just asked some questions about management, and does it make sense to have somebody within the department doing personnel matters, that same salary or consumption of dollars could go to a rec center, whether we could have a director or what have you. But I think it's only fair that I allow you to put it into context. How many facilities does Rec and Parks actually oversee and is responsible for?
Over 400.
To the nearest?
Over 400. Over 400.
Over 400. Now, how many full-time and part-time employees are within the Recreation and Parks Department?
We started off this fiscal year with 1,992 full-time authorities. Throughout this fiscal year, we have held about 300 of those vacant to make up for...
So you have an excess on any given day, 1,500 people showing up to work all over the city, reporting to over 400 facilities. And so in that context, do you think it makes sense for us to go ahead and eliminate having somebody handling personnel matters within the department?
No, I don't. Because, like I say, for our department, we still have thousands of part-time employees. We're still a department of considerable size, and because of the issues that we deal with, since we provide public services and so forth, that's why we think it's best for us if we could still have our dedicated staff. And for our department, we're shrinking all over.
And most of your staff, certainly the vast majority of your staff, have public contact.
Yes.
Contact with the public.
Yes.
Whether they're part-time, full-time, they may be young or older, maybe more mature, less mature, what have you. So having your own people in-house for personnel, being able to get more immediate answers of how to deal with the public or how to react or act when somebody is being difficult or what have you, it's really important for you to be able to get those answers out there to your 400 sites, over 1,500 people on any given day, mainly to make sure that we don't have lawsuits.
For liability issues, for safety issues, and so forth, yes.
Yeah, because safety to a personnel person, if somebody were to make a mistake and say they think, well, I know, look, I'm standing here, the sprinkler's broken or what have you, and they'll go reach for it, and maybe they cut their hand or what have you. First of all, they're out of work, then all of a sudden we have to pay for other tertiary responsibilities, and we will do that, but the bottom line is for people to understand that maybe they should understand that maybe they should wait for somebody else to do it or what have you, even though they're just doing it because they're trying to be responsible. Those are the kinds of things that people need to understand when you have a field work of over 1,500 people on any given day, over 400 sites, etc. because in the long run, even though somebody was trying to be nice, they're actually costing themselves that particular park site, them being out of work for a while, and also the system of our own, because we're self-insured. We end up costing ourselves thousands upon thousands of dollars more per incident, and then on 1,500 people over a given year, we could be costing ourselves millions upon millions of dollars every year if we're not managing ourselves right.
That's correct, but it's more than 1,500 every day. It's at least 4,000 every day that we're dealing with.
Yeah, when you count all the part-time, et cetera, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was just trying to be conservative because I wouldn't want to try to over-embellish the facts. So even at that, where there's 1,500 or 4,000, there is some semblance of making sense that we'd rather be just making sure that we're being appropriately careful and as streamlined as possible and not being penny-wise and pound-foolish.
Yes, and this is for our employees as well as for the public.
And the taxpayer, ultimately.
Yes.
Right? Because the taxpayers pay the salaries, the taxpayers pay us when we are in a lawsuit, the taxpayers have to contribute when people are on disability, etc. The taxpayer, the taxpayer, the taxpayer, the taxpayer. At the end of the day, they're the ones footing the bill, whatever that bill looks like.
Correct.
Well, thank you for your efficiency. Appreciate it.
All right, no further speakers in the queue. Madam Clerk, what is the action to be taken today?
There is an amending motion, so that can be adopted as amended if council wishes.
All right, open the roll on that. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Next item.
The next item is item 11, and that was called special by Councilmember Hahn.
Ms. Hahn. Ms. Hahn, item 11.
Harbor reimbursements.
Next item.
I just wanted to, just get a clarification about positions that are funded by the Harbor Department.
Okay. We have some positions that are special funded by the Harbor Department. Currently, this fiscal year, and has been for the past, the city's general fund gets the reimbursements from the Harbor Department, not the Department of Recreation and Parks. What we have proposed for the new budget to begin on July 1st is that we receive that funding directly. In the past, what has happened is that Harbor has provided the reimbursement, but Recreation and Parks also was paying for it because we were using our funding. We are now trying to have this placed direct source of funds in our budget for the next fiscal year.
And has there been any discussions with the Harbor Department to maybe consolidate positions like landscaping? I've been hearing about the dueling lawnmowers in the harbor area. On one side of the street, it's Rec and Parks with a lawnmower. On the other side, it's the Harbor Department mowing the lawn. Somewhere in there, Street Services also has a lawnmower that they got a little piece of it that they're mowing. I think these are the kinds of efficiencies, hopefully, as we get on the other side of this crisis, we can consolidate and streamline. I know there's a proposal about possibly entering into a memorandum of understanding with Recreation and Parks for maybe the landscaping of the Harbor Department's open space. Can you enlighten me on that a little bit? Yes. By the way, I think it's a good idea.
Yes, we are in discussions with the Harbor Department to look at Recreation and Parks providing landscape maintenance services in that area of the city, which we are very open to. We're looking at, they are very willing to provide, this is not their core service, and it is core for Recreation and Parks.
Right.
So we are looking at trying to handle that with them and maintain that service for them, and with them reimbursing our department. And also, hopefully, we'll be able to save some of our employees' jobs so they would not be laid off.
I was going to ask, do we see that as a way to save jobs?
Yes.
Because I would really like for that to move forward as quickly as possible. The Harbor Department is creating more open space than they have ever created. The Wilmington buffer zone is going to be coming online soon. The waterfront in San Pedro is going to be creating open space. Again, they have a lot of open space, and again, it's clearly not their core mission to be the landscapers. So I've heard that for some reason it's just not happening, but can you tell me that It is happening.
It is
Am I to
happening.
save jobs quickly?
Yes, we're having those discussions as we speak so that we can try to get this together as quickly as possible.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Tony, you want to
That's our only speaker on this matter. Madam Clerk, your suggestion?
The item is before council. Council can take a vote on that.
All right, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Next item, please.
Next item is item 15, that was called special for cards, and the Bureau of Engineering report has been distributed to the council members for adoption.
Number 15. Let's see who's in the card file. Arnold Sachs. Arnold Sachs is out of time. No one on the queue. Open the roll. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Next item, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, on that one, I believe there was a request to send that matter forthwith.
Then let's do it forthwith. That'll be the direction.
The next items are the closed session items. Those are 12 through 14.
We will now go into closed session. Colleagues, Sergeant Arms, please clear the chambers. And we will continue the meeting in closed session. If you are not here on the closed session item, you need to leave the chambers. Thank you. back in open session, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Closed session complete. We have 3 items before us. Madam Clerk, take them away.
First item, Mr. President, is item number 12, and that settlement in the case of Stallworth versus City of Los Angeles. The settlement amount is $635,798 plus interest.
Very well. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Next item, please.
Next item is item number 13, and that settlement in the case of Garcia versus City of Los Angeles. The settlement amount is $250,000.
On that matter, open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Next item, please.
Next item is item number 14, and that settlement in the case of Michael Rogers versus City of LA, and the settlement amount is $150,000.
On that matter, open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Next item, please.
Council has motions for posting and referral,
Posted and referred.
and that clears the desk.
Desk is clear. Announcements. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have several announcements. One, we've had many people in the city that have been victims of the foreclosure issue, and we have noticed that Wells Fargo and Wachovia customers they're going to have a 3-day event at the LA Convention Center in South Hall that deals with free training and some loan modification information. And so it's something that's for the community, March 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Convention Center. Also for the 8th and District, dealing with the Crenshaw line, there are going to be a variety of 4 workshops between March 23rd through March 31st that deals with community discussions about specific stops on that line, and the number to go to would be 213-891-2965 on the 23rd. The first meeting will be Tuesday, March 23rd, regarding the Florence and West Boulevard stop, and that's at Ascension Lutheran Church. On Wednesday the 24th, it's the Aviation Manchester stop, and that's at the Westchester United Methodist Church. On the 25th, there's at St. Mary's Academy. They'll be focusing on the Florence La Brea stop. And on the 27th of March, they're focusing on the Crenshaw Martin Luther King stop, and that's at Christ of Good Shepherd Episcopal Church. And on Wednesday the 31st, they'll be holding a meeting at Lula Washington Dance Studio, focusing on the Expo Crenshaw stop. And then the final announcement is that the budget meeting on the road will be this coming Monday at Expo Center, 6 p.m., 3980 Menlo, room 230 at the Expo Center.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas?
Councilmember Parks, could you clarify, what's that event for? Is it the Convention Center, and is it free?
Yes, free. It's the Wells Fargo and Wachovia customers are being invited to come to the Convention Center for 3 days to talk about loan modifications and a free seminar about foreclosures.
So it's geared toward their customers, but did they say whether it's open up to people who want to be future customers, perhaps?
Now, they didn't say that, but they give a number for information. It's 1-800-405-8067 for any information about this seminar.
So this is for people who are having problems paying their mortgages, and also employment training, or what was it?
Well, it was training about the issue of foreclosure and how they might modify their loans during this foreclosure process.
And it's free, right?
Free.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other announcements? Adjourning motions? Anyone with adjourning motions? No adjourning motions? Very well. Let's wish everyone a happy St. Patrick's Day. And Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Cardenas, Hahn.